Hi, my dear Astro family. So here is a video about the upcoming Taurus full moon, which is quite a potent one, actually, I would say. Not only because it has got a very tight conjunction to Uranus, but it is actually quite charged up by all the outer planets. So we have got a mini grand trine going on between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And the full moon is actually highlighting that. But before we dive into this full moon, I would like to let you know that my PayPal is back to business. So you can now book your reading and courses and webinars if you would like to. Actually, this weekend, I'm going to be holding a webinar about the evil side of Jupiter. And I highly recommend this webinar because often what happens with people that they think that Jupiter is all about doing good things in our chart, but it really has got the evil side as well. So I want to highlight those so that you don't get disappointed by the impact of Jupiter in your own natal chart. And also, I'm launching very soon the upcoming synastry course, which is going to be minimum 10 weeks. I'm going to be giving you the basics, how to read relationship charts. We're going to be looking at the basic needs of yourself from a relationship point of view. And then once we're going to put them together with someone else so that you can understand what the dynamic is between two people. Now, let's get started. So, this full moon, first of all, full moon is when the sun and the moon are in opposition. And often it is highlighting something in our life, but also it's brilliant for releasing something or making adjustments. And Taurus is, for example, your physical resources, your income, your self-worth, and something to do with a material foundation and your emotional and physical security level. So we can make adjustments around this. Definitely, when we have got a Taurus full moon happening, we have to be indulging in our five senses. So, for example, we can be walking in the nature, we can be singing, we can be writing music or stuff like that. That could be actually enhancing the Taurian part of your chart. And Taurus, because it's such a money sign, it's all about how to achieve a material security in our life. But remembering that this is a opposition between the sun and the moon. So we've got our needs and wants that need to be balanced out. So what we need to be able to balance out is that it's not just about our physical well-being, but maybe our emotional well-being that needs to be looked at as well. So that would be one of the key highlights here. Now, apart from, I mean, this full moon is packed up with a lot of aspects actually. So, first of all, as I said, it has got a conjunction to Uranus, a very tight one. The Sun also trines Neptune and sextiles Pluto. And also, we've got Mercury in a long T square with Jupiter and Saturn. And typically, it is not as long as it is right now, but Mercury is about to go retrograde. And also, we've got a trine to Chiron. And Venus, the dispositor of this full moon, actually has got a square to the nodes. So a lot going on here. It really feels like that this lunation is about self-transformation and something to do with intense feelings. So maybe this Taurus full moon is asking us to ground our body, to ground our emotions. So we are not kind of like all over the place, how much we allow our emotions to kind of affect our physical body. But because Uranus is in the picture, it is actually kind of like disrupting that that kind of peace that Taurus is thriving for. So there is an element of insecurity coming with this. And because Moon is in the sign of Taurus, often this is an emotional instability. And Uranus, from an emotional point of view, it makes us feel restless. Yes, it could give you a lot of intuitive insights, a sudden revelation about how to invest into things. or even how to break old habits. And on top of that, even it could give you ideas about how to make a little bit more money for yourself. It's just there is Neptune in the picture, which is definitely giving you a lot of abilities to imagine things. And it can make you highly sensitive as well. And Pluto being in the picture, it's going to be intensifying. So maybe an intense feeling about my situation, for example, and definitely there is that groundbreaking energy to it as well, with Uranus being so tightly in conjunction to the full moon, but it also wants to get you out of your comfort zone. And that's where the breaking the old habit comes into the picture. A habit, not necessarily as in habit, like I'm going to be changing, for example, my lifestyle and I'm going to give up on certain type of things in my life. It is wanting us to move on from something. It wants us to be, because it's an opposition, often we are going to be get confronted by others, and others are pushing us to make certain type of changes in our lives or forcing us to adapt to a new situation. This full moon is actually creating a cradle aspect here. So a cradle is, just imagine what we do with a cradle when it comes to a baby. We nurture them, right? We want them to fall asleep and so forth. So I feel like that Uranus kind of wants you to wake up. It doesn't want you to sleep as much because in order for you to make changes, you're going to have to be alert. I would say that, this Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto mini grand trine is highly important since 2020, when we had all these big constellations, such as the Saturn Jupiter conjunction, we had the Pluto Jupiter, the Pluto Saturn, and so forth. We had a lot of things going down. 2024 is big from this Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto perspective. So we might want to be focusing a little bit more on the sensual part. Taurus is quite highly artistic as well. But remember, it's not about just kind of like sitting on our laurels, waiting for opportunities. All these three outer planets are pushing us to make a massive change. Pluto is the planet of empower. Uranus is giving you pretty much the element of surprise and shocking news, as well as kind of like a little bit of an electrifying feeling. So you're going to have to be able to not only to focus on those changes, but feeling empowered to make the first step. It really feels like with that Uranus that we're going to have to be able to kind of like go with the flow in a way and being unapologetically ourselves. And we need to be able to listen to our intuition. And maybe we need to be able to discover our gifts and talents as well. And Pluto is who is going to be telling you that it's time to let go of something that is not serving you anymore. Of course, that Pluto is being on 29-degree, making a trine to the sun in the sign of Scorpio. So maybe this is an old emotional trauma, a psychological complex that you need to be able to let go of. And then if you do so, and then you discover your own talents, then this full moon can be quite potent, and it could give you certain type of physical or material power as well. I mean, all three outer planets are connected to occultism. So there is definitely a big message here that you need to be able to somehow research and look at your mental well-being from an occult point of view as well. And not to mention that even Ceres is quite close to Pluto as well, which is bringing in the topic of self-nurturing. And Taurus is about the five senses, right? So we need to make ourselves feel better. And Pluto Ceres, kind of like forever enemies, pretty much, because Pluto abducted her daughter. But then they managed to come to terms. Together, they really talk about the need to do a little bit of a self-reflection, a little bit of a shadow work. But series is connected also to growth. So in order for us to grow, there is a lot of things that we need to be able to let go. Now, of course, the Moon Uranus conjunction could also indicate that you are going through an emotional turmoil in your life. And then all of a sudden, it intuitively kind of like exposes some of those psychological complexes that you haven't healed yet. And then now it's time to kind of break away from them. Uranus is kind of like wanting to kind of cut ties with a huge chain. So it's about walking away from a situation that is controlling you, holding you down, pinning you down. And also, it's definitely something that is old because Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn. It has been there since what, 2008? And also, it's on the 29th degree. So it gives that sense of urgency. It can feel like that this is my last chance to walk away from all these emotional pains. The other side of Uranus is that it could be stirring things up. It could be stirring things up in security systems. So we might see in the world, for example, that some of the security systems are crashing, cyber attacks and all those type of things. But on a personal level, this is definitely bring shifts and sudden shifts in your personal life. So for example, if it happens in your fourth house, I just want to relocate. So with Uranus, we need to be trying out something new. We need to be upgrading something. So we might want to be looking at how to upgrade our self-worth, how to upgrade our finances, or even having to relook at, for example, our own financial habits. Now, two asteroids that are also involved here. We've got a very tight quincunx happening with Pallas Athene, who is definitely asking us to be strategic about it. It is telling us to come up with a plan. It is telling us that we need to be rolling up the sleeves and then work on these adjustments. This might be also telling us that we need to be able to negotiate with someone about what we exactly would like to achieve and maybe having certain type of discussions about finances, for example. But with Pallas Athene, it is also very important that it needs to be somehow kind of like a winning situation to everyone. So it's not all about me benefiting from someone, but let others benefit as well. So that's why we call Pallas Athene as the win-win situation. Now, as you can see, because I put the chart on the screen as well, in case you would like to follow, but Pallas Athene is in the sign of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is about coming up with a plan for the future. And also, both of them love shooting towards the stars. So in order for you to create a better future, you're going to have that strategic mindset. And also, we've got Vesta involved as well, who is actually making quite a tight square to this full moon. So, sorry, Vesta is not making a square to the full moon. I'm making a mistake here. Vesta is actually making a square to the dispositor, which is Venus, but I'm going to come on to that in a short while. Sorry about that. Okay, so these would be some of the foundations here. Now, going back to these outer planets, I feel like Pluto is giving you the personal power, while Neptune is giving you the ability to imagine something. But also, Venus, who is the dispositor, is in the sign of Capricorn, which is, on one hand, telling us that we need to approach things from a practical and very realistic way. When it comes to your finances, your self-worth, your indulging, and so forth. And definitely Venus wants to see long-term results here. It has got a desire for the creation of security and stability, for example, in your relationship. Let's say I want to be supported by my partner, because Taurus also represents support systems, but Taurus can also represent your defense mechanism as well. And it looks like that Uranus and Pluto wants to kind of knock down the defense mechanism here, though. And most importantly, it wants you to become serious and it wants you to commit to something. So maybe it's time to organize your finances a little bit. Yes, this Venus is a little bit emotionally distant or cold a little bit. So it tends to be focusing quite a lot on those, on those practical things. And that's where Neptune is coming into the picture. Because this might be an indication here who is telling you that you need to be able to actually be a little bit more on the sensitive side, or sometimes you're going to have to be able to place yourself in other people's shoes in order for you to understand some of your relationship patterns, financial patterns. Sometimes you're going to have to be able to kind of forgive others as well. And we need to be dealing with the past also. So Neptune is the planet of compassion. But the good thing about the whole thing is that because we've got quite that earth tone to it, we can give shape and forms to all those kind of like dreams that we have. We just need to be able to work towards it. Both Pallas Athene, Venus, and the full moon wants to give you the strength. And I love that from that point of view. Now, what else do we see in this chart? I mean, there is a lot to mention. Venus is actually having a quincunx to Mars. And I feel like that might be also actually quite important in this chart. And the reason being is because Mars is almost retrograde. So we have got the planet of wants and the planet of kind of like desire. They are a little bit in a clashing mode. So this could talk to us about that we might not be able to come to terms how to actually approach things that we want or how to do things when it comes to our desire. So Venus is the planet of relationship, money, and values. And it could feel like in the sign of Capricorn that it's a little bit restricted. And then Mars comes into the picture, who is kind of like forcing you to act on something. But this Mars is quite courageous. Sometimes it's showing off a little bit. Sometimes it's an attention seeker. And so maybe it is drying out Venus even more. I mean, Venus in the sign of Capricorn can be quite dry, but Mars in Leo is extremely hot and dry as well. So we've got a double dryness coming here. And remember that, for example, you would like a long-term relationship, but you want all these kind of like attentions from others. We can become quite greedy with this. The problem with these two planets that they have no compatibility going on between them too. So this is a quincunx. We call this in astrology as an aversion because they are 6 signs away from each other, so they cannot see. So it is something that you cannot see, that you might be able to go to the extreme with this. So it brings in an element of frustration and sometimes awkwardness as well. Because it's 6 signs away, it talks to us about small things, small adjustments. So again, this is about fixing something. This is about step by step. I'm going to be moving forward rather than dreaming big. Now, that's where probably, for example, Neptune, Pluto, and this Uranus could be a little bit of a danger, even with a mini grand trine, that we wish for something very big. And then the quincunx between Venus and Mars are suggesting that we need to go forward step by step. Also, it's a tension between them two. So Mars is quite ego-driven, for example, in the sign of Leo. So imagine that someone who is egotistical going to be hurting your feelings, and then Venus in Capricorn kind of shuts down a little bit. Or it could also talk to us about that I'm judging others because of that ego-driven kind of nature, for example. So we are maybe stepping down a little bit, walking away from an opportunity. Or what we should be doing is that we need to be stepping back and then look at the person from a different point of view who might be hurting your ego. Um, I mean, Venus and Mars together is the combo of attraction. So imagine, for example, in synastry, it could indicate that two people who are completely different are so attracted to each other, but at one point, their kind of like differences are going to be quite highlighted for others. Or it's kind of like attracting someone for the wrong reason. So the reason why we need a bit of a planning here, because often when we want to attract something with Venus and Mars quincunxes, unfortunately, they are going to be happening somehow in a different way. So that's one of the major aspects that we might be seeing here as an important one. Now, the other thing that I mean, probably we would be able to talk about, of course, the upcoming T square between Mercury and Mercury and Jupiter and Saturn, but maybe I'm not going to be doing that today. Maybe I should be doing a separate video because I'm going to be making one definitely on the upcoming Mercury retrograde. What I would say though is that the Venus and the node squares are quite prominent. So let's talk about that. First of all, Venus is disposing the South node in the sign of a Libra. So that is another testimony that we are working with certain type of problems, Capricorn as in working, that emerged in the past. And that's the South node. Maybe we go down on a memory lane and we start kind of like spotting certain type of relationship patterns, financial patterns, for example. So we are making certain type of discoveries. But Venus in Capricorn, this is definitely telling us that we need to be accountable and responsible for our own actions as well, realizing that we need two to tango. And the same applies to finances as well, of course, because Taurus, is kind of like a financial as well as a relationship sign. It doesn't mean that you're going to have to be dragging yourself down, but being realistic about it. And for example, imagine that it is happening. For example, Venus is going through your 10th house. Maybe what we need to be imagining here is that the job that I'm in and my heart desires are completely different. And maybe what we might be able to discover is that we have got a tendency to follow certain type of patterns. Maybe the way how I relate to others is a bit of a problem, or maybe the way how people are relating to me is also, not acceptable. And this is the reason why I don't enjoy, for example, uh, the work situation. Now, in evolutionary astrology, we tend to call this as a skipped step. So when the planet is actually connecting to um, the nodes by a T-square, then what we tend to see is that we are tend to be doing both of them at the same time. So for example, um, in the natal chart, what it pretty much shows that sometimes the people in our life will hinder us from growth, as well as they are going to be helping us to achieve growth as well, pretty much at the same time. So, for example, maybe let's imagine that because Venus and Mars are in quincunx now, while Venus is squaring the nodes. So imagine that you get nagged by someone, you get pushed by someone, and it comes across kind of like, oh, you do that on purpose, you want to undermine me, and so forth. But at the same time, they get you out of your comfort zone as well. Or this square could indicate the desire to have money or love in your life, but that might be holding you back from a growth, from the creation of that stability in your life, because you tend to be focusing on one thing. Or maybe it's about self love versus loving from others or love from others. And that is somehow out of balance here. So what it means is that maybe I tend to be kind of like, let's say Venus is in the sign of Aquarius. You tend to be loving yourself more, and then therefore you keep yourself emotionally detached so that others cannot hurt you. There is always a psychological reason behind. Or now let's go back to the Taurus full moon, right? Keeping money versus spending money. What shall I do with it? Keeping my investments, or or selling the investments, right? This could be kind of like a decision making. So whenever there is a T square happening between a planet and the nodes, it indicates that we are in a limbo. We need to be able to um, make a decision about something. And it looks like this is actually connected to your self-worth, food, Taurus, nature, environment, finances, and so forth. But because Venus is the dispositor of the South node, it looks like that it is something that you have been dealing with for a while. Or secondly, it could also indicate that not necessarily completely walking away from something. Let's say from an investment point of view, I'm meant to be selling 75% of it and then keeping 25. So a bigger portion would be something to do with leaving something behind and then moving forward. And often this Venus is a little bit afraid in the sign of Capricorn, of course, whether I'm loved or I'm going to get rejected. So this is definitely a very interesting combination here that is popping up. And as you can see, this is going to be highly important, um, I would say, from a evolutionary point of view. So let's summarize on this one. We've got a little bit of a tension going on between all these earthly, practical things versus the emotional, the crisis-orientated type of scorpionic element. While the moon in Taurus wants to find emotional security, and usually by simplified things like indulging in food and receiving gifts and jewelries and all these type of nice shiny things, a comfortable pair of shoes. The Scorpio sun says to us that we need to be focusing a little bit also on our complexities, and we need to be able to dive deeper to kind of figure out all these mysteries around us. So an opposition is always a conflicting situation. And also, this is the axis of sharing, because Taurus is about collecting, while Scorpio is about sharing something. So it would be highly important that we kind of focus on how much to share and how much to keep in a way. Now that Uranus is elevating our feelings, it is bringing surprising situations, even surprising reactions to things as well. And we can get highly excited about a new opportunity, for example. But surely this could also give you quite the urge to walk away from an outdated relationship. And I have to be making a very serious decision about that with that Venus T square to the notes. But maybe it's also our comfort zone. And maybe I'm not doing that because I don't know, rent or or children or all those type of things. So it could feel really heavy. But it also, with having all outer planets being in the picture, it feels like that this is the right course of action to do. It feels like that this is part of my mission. And actually, if I, so therefore, there is a strong desire to discover and explore things here. And that's why this full moon is very important because now it feels like that whatever decisions you are going to be making, it's going to be affecting you in the next 18 months quite significantly. Because do you not just look at this Venus square the nodes, that, okay, it's just a few days and then things are going to be walking away. This is actually going to be impacting your future quite a lot. Remember that Taurus is quite slow. So that's where Uranus is coming into the picture, who is actually telling you that we need to move a little bit faster. We cannot just be, remember, it's a cradle chart shape as well, where we tend to be relaxing, chilling out, and sleeping. And the Uranus is telling you that it's time not to sleep anymore. So if you want to be breaking away from a situation, you cannot take easy. We're going to have to be able to get serious. We're going to have to roll up the sleeves. And also, Taurus is one of the most stubborn sign of all. So you kind of need to be, a little bit less stubborn of whatever situation you are in. And maybe you want to invest into something emotionally. And often we make an emotional decision and then we regret that later on. That's where Paula Satini and, um, for example, Venus square to the nodes come into the picture. That is it an emotional investment and is it an emotional want from my side, or actually it's quite realistic? So stability, security, removing certain type of blockages from our life are some of the most important keywords here, but also working on that inner self, on our confidence level and self-esteem as well. And yeah, maybe you expect certain things to turn out in one way, but unfortunately, there could be some unexpected developments come in. And then maybe we procrastinate things. And then unfortunately, it gets out of hand as well. So we need to find something with that Venus and Mars quincunx as well. That's something that is motivating us to move forward. So surely there are a lot of changes coming up, especially with Pluto being on 29-degree, Uranus connecting to this full moon. Yeah, so guys, I will be making a separate video on this upcoming Mercury retrograde, which is actually in T square to Saturn and Jupiter, because this is a longer period. It's going to be lasting till the end of the year. And also, Pluto is going to be in sextile to the nodes. So those are going to be my next two videos. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.